So who talks first? You talk first? I talk first?
I'm one with the force is with me.
I've seen your daily routine. You're not busy.
This is where the fun begins.
I find that answer vague and unconvincing.
We're fine. We're all fine here now, thank you. How are you?
We would be honored if you would join us.
Welcome to the Cantina Cabana. We are podcasting to you from the wretched hive of scum and villainy, where the bantam milk is always blue, inviting y'all along as we explore to that galaxy far, far away. James, how was your week?
It's pretty good, man. Pretty good. How about you?
It was uneventful for the most part. Tell you, I was getting myself psyched up today, leaving work. I was blaring Duel of Fates on my way to get home, just to try to put my mind, try to get in the right mindset to begin this episode.
Yeah.
First off,
get you pumped up to review the best Star Wars movie, right?
Yeah. So I'm not. Yeah. So
George Lucas's magnum opus, I think they call it.
Magnum opus. Obviously, you guys clicking on to this particular episode, we're going to be reviewing the Phantom Menace, episode 1. A lot of interesting debate and a lot of interesting things to kind of pull away from this episode. Especially, we're gonna do our best we can to stay as positive as we can, so to speak. There's obviously a lot of negativity that you can extract from this film. But there are some gems. There are some sweet spots in there that we can talk about. But we're just going to kind of go in a chronological kind of order, breaking down this film and talking about it with you guys. So once again, thank you for tuning in. If you are, I appreciate it.
Yeah, and this is. I mean, it's hard to call it a straight up review because it's not so much us saying, hey, this is a good movie, you should go see it, or this is a bad movie, you should not watch it. Because most people who are watching this or listening to this, I should say, you've probably seen the movie at this point. This is just more of a general discussion about the movie itself. It came out, 1999? So
20 years ago this year.
20 years ago. Yeah. 20
Holy
years
shit.
ago. That's crazy to think about.
I know.
20 years ago, this movie released into theaters. So it's just kind of more of a, let's look back on the, I guess you could say, legacy that this film has left behind and how it affected the series as a whole. So it's...
Yeah, that's the thing. This movie, as crummy and, unnecessary this movie is, this thing really opened the doors, as Star Wars is known to do, in the film industry with the graphics and all that kind of stuff. So for what this film is, it certainly has, impacted the film industry, good, both good and bad.
Yeah. And even nowadays, I think that the general consensus of the prequel films has kind of changed a lot since Disney took over, especially with, if any of you are familiar with the subreddit dedicated to like memes that are made from the prequel movies, how they've sort of immortalized a lot of the worst moments of these movies and turned them into just comedy gold mines almost.
I think every single scene of the prequels have been memed out.
Pretty much in some way, shape, or form. But yeah, there's definitely a different atmosphere regarding these prequel films now than there was 5 years ago. And I mean, even for me, still they're kind of a mixed bag. And of course we'll delve more into that as we go through all of these movies. But it is still, to this day, episode 1 has a lot of really interesting things about it, has a lot of things about it that I think were terrible narrative choices, terrible creative choices, some of which were somehow able to be pulled off, and then others just fell apart miserably.
Yeah, I mean, I know we're kind of doing a big preamble here, but Yoda in episode 5 was a huge risk, for that movie. If that puppet did not work, that movie would have been garbage. Jabba the Hutt, same thing. If Jabba the Hutt did not work, that movie would have been really bad. Jar Jar Binks, the biggest, hottest topic of episode one, and kind of the scapegoat, honestly, of episode one. George Lucas took a risk and it just didn't deliver. And that's, you can't fault George Lucas for trying to take initiative, especially from a computer generating effects perspective.
Yeah. Yeah, and we're going to get into more of that as we go through this film. So, as you said before, we're going to go through it chronologically. So, do you want to kick things off for us on this one?
Yeah, I'll just go ahead and get right to it. Like you said, 1999. I did not see this movie in theaters. I was about 9 years old. I don't know how I missed the hype train of episode one coming out, but just a quick background. I did not see episode one in theaters. I didn't even know Star Wars was coming out.
I remember when it came out, my dad and I went to the theater, and it was probably the week or two after it came out. And I mean, of course I'd watched all the other Star Wars movies, and I was excited for this one simply because Darth Maul was like splattered all over the marketing material. Like, there was some partnership they had with like Pepsi and Dr. Pepper or something where all the cans had characters' faces on them. Mm-hmm. There were toys, of course. And I remember I was going to go to see the movie, and I had a Darth Maul shirt, like a t-shirt. And my dad and I went to the movie theater, and it was one of those movie theaters that was inside a mall. And we got in the front door, bought our tickets, bought popcorn, everything. And as soon as we sat down, I don't know what happened, but like when the lights went down, I freaked out, got scared. This was a thing with me when I was younger, that up until I was like 5 years old, as soon as I got to a movie theater and the lights went down, I would freak out and get scared. So I had to leave.
Theater phobia.
Pretty much. Yeah. Which is crazy, looking back on it now, when just a few years ago, I was going to see 20, 30 movies every year. I've lost a lot of money doing that. But I remember I got so scared, and my dad took me out of the theater, and instead of like taking me home, he called my mom to come get me, and she ended up taking me home, and he stayed and watched the movie. He was like, "There's no way I'm not going to sit here and watch this." My kid could cry all day long.
You didn't even Well, you say you didn't even watch. You didn't stick around for it at all.
No, I didn't see it. I didn't see that movie until it came out on VHS.
Yeah, well, like I said, for me, for whatever reason, I just missed the train. I don't know what my parents were doing. I don't know. We didn't have. I don't know. So inexcusable. But so we get to the scroll. We get the episode, the long time ago. So the hype is there. And then as soon as that scroll starts is where you immediately notice, like if you just go into this movie with a clean slate, clean palette, you immediately notice that there is an interesting crawl to this, to where it's just really wordy and garbly. Turmoil has engulfed the Galactic Republic, taxation, trade routes, and outlying star systems in dispute, and blockades and treaties. And it's like, what is George Lucas? Okay, so what are we doing here? In my opinion, the back plot of what George Lucas had in his brain is okay, because war has foundation in politics.
Yeah.
Look at the American Revolution, taxation without federation, representation. Civil War was about, obviously slavery and states' rights versus federal rights. World War II, rise against fascism. So there is political purpose, what makes a war, but George Lucas really, for whatever reason, wanted to stick to that as the root of the movie.
Yeah, I think that, and that's that whole idea of centering episode one around politics and these trade routes or whatever. I think that in itself is one of the biggest problems with, I guess, Star Wars in general, is where when the movies are criticized, a lot of people, even those who work on the movie, tend to say, well, it's made for children. It's aimed at children. It's a story meant for kids. Yet you introduce these sorts of things, these sorts of concepts and ideas that a lot of kids, one, don't care about. Two, even the ones who would care about it may not necessarily get it. So right off the bat, because keep in mind that this was the first Star Wars movie in 15 years, I think.
Since 83, yeah.
Yeah, so around 15, 16 years. And the first thing that you're doing when you go back to tell this epic trilogy, kind of giving people backstory as to what happened in the original trilogy, is this overwhelming amount of exposition regarding trade routes and embargoes and political drama and stuff like that. And yeah, sure, there's always been a political, I guess, subtext you could say to the Star Wars universe, but this was just way too much. It was way too much.
Yeah, see, that's what made episode 4 so spectacular, because think how episode 4 starts. It just throws you like literally right into the action. And you get snippets of the political background, like Tarkin rolls in and says the last remnants of the old republic have been swept away, or the Senate's been dissolved. And it's literally like in 5 seconds, you kind of get a context of what's going on politically. So I think Lucas, he's even quoted for saying, I like to, go right into the action. But he just really had it in his mind to start off this movie with so much exposition and trade, tax. It was right from the get-go. Like I said, you knew that we were, had a bad feeling about this. Certainly, that's why I always kind of laugh that Obi-Wan's, the first line of this, other than the pilots, the first line of this is, I have a bad feeling about this.
Yeah. And another thing is that I've had a lot of conversations with people over the years about the art of script writing and the art of filmmaking. And one of the most important lessons I've learned in all of it is that film and the whole point of it is to tell you things without actually telling you. It's showing, not telling. And right. I think that the original film, A New Hope, is a masterful, just wonderful example of that kind of thing, where you can watch that movie not knowing anything about the Star Wars universe, and it shows you everything that you need to know. It doesn't just beat you over the head with, oh, this is why the Empire hates the rebels. This is why Darth Vader wants to do this. It shows you and explains everything through the visual medium that filmmaking is. And somehow
it doesn't show the motive.
Yeah.
It doesn't tell you, it shows you with the visuals.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that mainly that all comes from the fact that with these prequel movies, George Lucas pretty much did all of it himself. Like, he wrote and directed it all himself. He didn't have any sort of support narratively.
Feedback.
Yeah, he was surrounded by people that just blindly agreed with every decision that he wanted to make. And that's not always...
Yes, man.
Yeah, that's not always a bad thing. However, in situations like this, it really did not work out, in my opinion. I just don't think it worked out. I think that episode 1, with the amount of hype regarding it, starts out on such a bland, dull note, just in that opening crawl. And it really gives you kind of a down feeling about the rest of the movie. I could definitely understand how people seeing it back in 1999 on opening night or opening weekend, probably it didn't sink in until probably the second or third viewing. But every time I've watched episode 1, I always have that feeling of, man, I'm already bored and I haven't even seen any of the characters yet.
Yeah, it's same here for sure. And that feeling kind of creeps up on you. Like I said, you can watch this movie through so many different lenses. You can watch it through someone who's critiquing a film. You can watch it, as if you've seen it for the first time and really try to absorb it. So there's so many different lenses that you kind of go through watching this film, and my perception of this film changes all the time. As a kid, I love this movie. I thought it was awesome, but obviously as an adult, it kind of does drag. I guess that's the most polite way I could say it. So dragging on, just trying to, like I said, trying to stay chronological with the storyline. We get introduced to Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi. Like I said, Obi-Wan has I have a bad feeling about this, which I thought was great. Just go ahead and get it right out of the way. I thought it was good to give to Obi-Wan.
Yeah.
I really do like their relationship. And a lot of people argue, like, what's the point of Qui-Gon? Qui-Gon didn't even have to be in this film. And even the whole debate of, like, well, isn't Yoda supposed to be the master of Obi-Wan? Because that's what he says in Dagobah in Yoda's hut. But I really like Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon's relationship in this film.
So when I was rewatching it for the sake of this review, I agree, especially at the beginning, seeing Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, there is definitely a clear a clear representation that that they've been master and apprentice for quite a while, and I liked that a lot. I wish that there was a bit more between them throughout the movie, and we'll get to that later because there's a critical point in this movie where Obi-Wan pretty much goes away for like 20 minutes, and it sucks. It completely ruins any momentum that relationship has. But I think
he's on eBay trying to sell the Queen's clothes, like actually legitimately trying to get price check her wardrobe.
Yeah. I don't agree with the idea that Qui-Gon was useless. I think that, well, I don't know. I'm kind of down the middle on that. I think that there is a certain part of this movie. It's the second half of this movie, Qui-Gon is definitely useless. Like, once again, we'll get to that later. But for the first
I think he's
half,
absolutely essential, because without Qui-Gon, Anakin would not have been, taken under the wing and brought before. So, like, without Qui-Gon, I hate that argument of Qui-Gon not being essential to this plot.
Well, it's just that to me, and like I said, I'll get way more on this later once we come to that point in the movie. But the thing about Qui-Gon is that for the first half, I feel like the biggest issue with this movie, other than it being dull, is that the pacing is completely terrible. Because we spend so long trying to get through this whole pod racing, and Anakin's on Tatooine and he's a slave. And then as soon as we leave Tatooine and Anakin is with Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, the entire movie wraps up in about 30 minutes. And we brush through all this important stuff that really should have been the core focus of the movie, yet it is just bogged down with all this other just
Senate committee
stuff,
meetings,
this time wasting stuff that's going on. So I think that Qui-Gon is great and super important in the first half, but once he leaves Tatooine, that's when his whole thing falls apart. And I'll talk more about that later. But I will say that watching the movie this time and watching Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon's relationship, it actually made me kind of interested in getting that book that we talked about on the last episode.
Master and Apprentice.
Yeah. So I might have to check that one out. Just, if there's enough free time to sit down and read it, I'd actually like to read that and see if it adds a little bit more depth to their relationship.
Yeah, they released a synopsis for it, a synopsis for it yesterday. I read it. I don't know when they released it, but I read it yesterday, and it looked pretty promising, because it's going to kind of go into Qui-Gon's uncertainty of the council and why he's kind of like a rogue Jedi. He's not bad as far as I know, but he's kind of, he follows the beat of his own drum. So I'm interested in that aspect of that book. So yeah, I'm like you. I might want to pick that up and check it out.
Right.
So moving right along with the story of episode 1. Yeah, we're going to go off on a lot of tangent, guys. So hopefully we'll try to stick to it. We get introduced to the bad guys. I can't think of it. Nemoidians. That's the race, right?
Yeah.
That's the non-racist, endearing Nemoidians. Did you ever pick up on that? How they're like Japanese? They don't like this.
Yes, that's another thing.
I never noticed that until listening to other people review this film.
Yeah, that's another thing that I didn't pick up on until I was much older, is that this movie is filled to the brim with a lot of stereotypes.
This movie is so racist.
Yeah, like this is a movie that if it were made in today's climate, oh
my God.
Dear God, it would have probably made less money than the last Kevin Spacey movie.
Yeah, well, besides all of that, I really don't like their mouths. Like, there's a debate of like, oh, they should have been dubbed over, but then George Lucas was quoted I watched the movie with commentary on. He's like, we thought about having the Star Wars subtitles over it, but because they talk so much that he didn't want the viewers to be reading the whole day. Like with Jabba, it's pretty quick.
Yeah.
So I don't like the way their mouth moves. Again, props to them for making a practical mask face operable mouth, but I really don't like their mouth moving. It just annoys the hell out of me. And then they even went back in the special editions and made them blink. In the original cut, they didn't blink.
Huh.
It's not distracting because you didn't notice, but
yeah,
it's distracting to me because I did notice, because I had the original DVD at one point. So let me try to they meet up, and we get introduced to the droidicas, which as a kid when I first watched this movie, I was scared of these things. I thought they were really badass and cool, and they offered some kind of resistance to the Jedi. You know, they got that force bubble thing, and I love the sound effects of the droidicas. Obviously, not the droids that can just get sliced through like butter. Those are a whole nother thing. George Lucas is quoted of saying, you know, that he kind of wanted them to be, you know, easily mowed over because they were kind of like the prototype of what would be the clone troopers. So he wanted to show how easily beatable they were to a degree, but it just doesn't, on film, it just offers no kind of intimidation factor whatsoever.
Right. So what happens when Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan are the whole point is that they're being sent through this trade blockade that the Neimoidians have set up to enter into some sort of negotiations.
To sign a peace treaty.
Yeah, to sign a peace treaty. And the Neimoidians, of course, because they're sinister, and you can tell that from the moment that they first appear on screen and talk, they try to kill the Jedi by putting a bunch of poisonous gas in the room with them. Because the Jedi are amazing, they get out of it and end up just mowing down droids left and right.
What did you say?
Yeah. So they escape this little assassination attempt and end up on the planet of Naboo. And that's
long story short, they end up on Naboo, and
kind of in the swampy areas.
Even watching this, I'm like, how far away did this invasion, how far away from the palace did they land to where they had to go completely off course to run into everyone's favorite Gungan, and really, like, they must have been so far away. So I've never understood, you know, this whole side adventure, I guess is what you want to call it, of bringing us to Jar Jar. I've never understood that. And then on top of that, like when the droid ships do invade, it's really, they just show up and walk up. Like there was no battle. Like why didn't George Lucas have a battle in there? It's always they come off the ship like, victory, and it's like what?
Yeah, one of the biggest issues with episode 1, as I said earlier, is that it's dull. But I'm noticing this when I was watching it for today's review. Almost every single action scene in this movie, with the exception of the final, I guess you could say 2, you know, when you've got Anakin in the ship attacking the blockade, plus Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon fighting Darth Maul. Every action scene in this film feels so pointless. It feels like it was just cobbled together because George Lucas wrote this really dialogue heavy script that focuses.
It's like the script says, and then they fight. And
it felt so just bland. None of the action scenes are fun. None of them get you excited in any way whatsoever.
No emotion to them at all.
Yeah, they really feel like transitions. They feel like as useless or as meaningless as the wipe cuts that Lucas does to transition us from scene to scene. They're only there to keep the audience from falling asleep.
Yeah, just to kind of wave a lightsaber for a couple of seconds and then move along to standing and talking and exposition.
Yeah.
So
but anyway, this scene is where we're introduced to Jar Jar and
fucking Jar Jar Binks, and don't bleep me out because I know you're going to try to, but
Jar Jar Binks. I mean, what could I actually say about this guy?
What hasn't been said about it?
Exactly. Like, what could I say about it that has not been said by a million other people? I hate that character with every fiber in my body. No ill will or no anger towards Ahmed Best, who received an unbelievable amount of harassment for that portrayal. I don't have a problem with him. I don't have a problem with the character in general. I have a problem with the way that character is written. And that falls on George Lucas's shoulders, as do a lot of the problems with this movie. I think that Jar Jar is he's sort of the embodiment of, hey, this whole thing is for kids, but it's for the really dumb kids, or the kids who have no idea at all what is really, I guess you could say, fascinating about Star Wars, because Jar Jar is just this source of poop jokes and, you know, Three Stooges style humor, and he's got a funny voice. That's all he really has for this whole thing, for this whole trilogy.
the the most ironic thing is that Jar Jar, like it or not, and however you want to look at it, is the most fleshed out character in this film.
Yeah, and
And that goes to show you what kind of a problem this is.
he's arguably the most important character in the prequel trilogy. I would argue that,
Yeah,
especially
I
once
mean,
we get to episode 3,
especially in
once-
episode 2, because he gives all the power to Palpatine. He
2 and
votes it
3.
in.
Like once we get to 2 and 3, that's when it becomes this big thing of Jar Jar is actually probably the most important character in all of Star Wars.
That's because he's a Sith Lord. Didn't you know that?
Oh God.
Jar-
Hey, look, I'll be honest with you. When that theory was rampant, I was totally on board with it. I was hoping it to be real.
Yeah, it's like something. Give us something. But yeah, like you said, Ahmed Best. I watched the behind the scenes in preparation for the show. He really, for lack of a better word, he nails his performance. He does everything that George asked him to do with bringing this character, this clumsy fucking character, to life for us. So kudos to him, honestly, and to the visual, FX, ILM. Kudos to them for what they were able to achieve with making Jar Jar feel real. I mean, even I know some of the graphics and some of the visuals don't hold up to today's eye test, but honestly, like for 1999. Jar Jar looks good. He visually he looks good, and they did a really good job of bringing that character to the film. But Jar Jar Binks. So we get I don't understand when Qui-Gon should have sent him away, but yet he said this creature may be of help.
Yeah, I don't
talking about Jar Jar, and then we get to the Gungan in front of the big boss Nas.
I love Boss Nass. Hold on, I love Boss Nass.
Well, hang on, let me finish my point. And then we get into the submarine pod, and then Qui-Gon says, "Don't worry, the Force will guide us." Like, because Jar Jar's even like, "Where's we going?" And Qui-Gon's like, "Don't worry, the Force will guide us." And I'm like, "Well, then why did you need him to get this Gungan maybe of help? It doesn't make sense story-wise." So, all right, we get to the Gungan city, go to Boss Nass, go for it.
Yeah, so when Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan are on Naboo, and the droids are coming in and attacking people, blah, 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 they run into Jar Jar. He's a Gungan, and they need help getting to the city of Naboo. Was there an official name for it? I know that I'm just...
It's Theed.
Theed. Okay, yeah, I was completely blanking on that. But anyway... Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, they need help getting to Theed to find the Queen Amidala. Jar Jar says, "Here, I'll take you to the Gungan city, and we can show you a shortcut."
It's a hidden city.
Yeah. So they go down to this Atlantis-looking place where the cities are covered in bubbles and stuff, and it's actually really cool. Like visually, it's really cool.
I like it. Visually, I do like it.
I will say that with all the things that I don't like about the writing of this movie, I think that George Lucas went all out in terms of the imagination power. And I think that he really introduced us to a lot of really cool places, locations that in a way sort of help me overlook the really bad writing that goes with those places. And the Gungan city is one of the best. It's one of the coolest things in the prequel trilogy, I think. So when Jar Jar leads our two heroes to the Gungan city, turns out Jar Jar has sort of been outcasted from the Gungan city by the Gungans and Boss Nass, who's I guess their leader, something like that. And this is actually something I really liked about this was we see where Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan come face to face with Boss Nass, and Boss Nass is kind of being a dick to him. Qui-Gon sort of uses a Jedi mind trick to get them a submarine boat that will take them through the planet core to Theed. And
Bongo, what's a Bongo Master? Transport, I hope.
Yeah. So it was cool seeing the Jedi mind trick get used to see, oh, well, that's where Obi-Wan learned it. That's
and
where
it was
he learned it.
And it was subtle too. So yeah, it wasn't like kind of in your face thing too. I like how subtle it was.
Yeah.
But again, I'm not a huge fan of Boss Nass specifically for his thing. Like why? Like,
that dude is
not even him as a character, but like George Lucas. Like why do that? Like don't.
That dude is very clearly like a Richard Nixon parody. I can't get over that character now because all I think about is Richard Nixon. I know that may sound weird, but just the way he talks, the tone of voice, everything about that character. When I see him, I just think about Richard Nixon.
God, he's just stupid.
He's great. He's a great character.
You know what else is stupid? And like, I don't know how to look at the planet core. Like, do they
love it.
literally go to the planet core? Like,
I don't know.
How far away is this invasion army from the palace? Is what blows my mind.
That whole situation where they go, I guess, through the planet core to Theed is one of those scenes I was talking about earlier, where it's just this pointless action scene. Because while Obi-Wan, Qui-Gon, and Jar Jar once again is now with them, I don't really understand why they wouldn't just go their separate ways and be done with it. While they're in this little submarine, they get attacked by a fish, which then gets
twice.
They
get it twice. There's always a bigger fish twice.
Yeah, and the fish that attacks them then gets attacked by another fish, and then they escape that bigger fish, get attacked by another fish, and then the bigger fish shows up again. So
it's a reference to Jurassic Park. Is kind of what I sum it up to.
I mean, that's
kind of like
fine,
at the end of the at the end of the original Jurassic Park. That's T-Rex comes in and takes out those two raptors. But why? I don't understand why he did it twice.
Yeah, it's and not only that, but like midway through that sequence, we jump or we wipe cut to other things that are going on. It just, that whole underwater thing, that is a prime example of a time where when Lucas was writing that script, he said, you know what? This is too boring. Here's a fish. Here's a fish that looks kind of like a shark. And then here's
looks like Godzilla.
Yeah. Then here's a Godzilla fish or a goober fish or whatever Jar Jar called it.
Oh, goober fish.
And it's so stupid. I hate that. And I know that a lot of our complaints so far sound like kind of minor things other than it's boring. It's a boring movie.
It's like Death by 1,000 Needles, though.
Yeah, but these are things that
film is.
These are things that's like every time I watch it, I'm just so confused as to like, how did this make it through? Like, how did nobody watch this and say, George, this has got to change, man. We got to redo some stuff here.
This is Rick McCallum. He's a producer of this film, and I was watching behind the scenes, and you could he curses a lot in the behind the scenes. He's dropping F-bombs like left and right all day. But even he nobody says no to George. He's the man. So that was, that's George's. He became the very villain that we should destroy.
Yeah,
basically, he kind of got too much power.
That's pretty much the extent of I know that conversation wasn't fully focused on Jar Jar because, like I said before, there isn't much that we could say here that no one else has said. So I'm going to try to abstain from elaborating too much on Jar Jar for the rest of this one, just because
until we get to him stepping in poop and Tatooine.
Yeah, it's just, he sucks. He's a bad character. Ahmed Best did great, but George Lucas completely failed in the writing of that character, just like another character we're going to get to really shortly. But the Gungan thing, like I said before, great looking city, just means very little. And we got a terrible action scene to get us to Theed, where Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon finally find the Queen. And honestly, this point in the movie is kind of a blur to me. So if you want to fill us in on that one.
Yeah, I mean, you basically hit it. They magically, out of that emotionally impact submarine ride, with the two fish, always a bigger fish, thrown in there. We pop up and feed and are pretty able to easily navigate to, and lo and behold, there's the Queen walking down, going to Camp 4, Roger. And again, the droids, they're just there to just be butter, to be sliced through, just worthless. So they rendezvous. Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to say about the droids real quick. I know that there's a lot of things in this prequel trilogy that were created with the sole intent to put in a little bit of comedic humor. I think that while the droids are incredibly annoying, their sort of humor would have been fine if it was just that. But
just them, sure, yeah.
Yeah, but if like inserting Jar Jar poop jokes or inserting just really terrible bits of things that we're going to see on Tatooine with the child actors, that did not need to be here at all. The droids, having a few.
They could have been more intimidating.
Yeah, a little bit. I think that just the plain old vanilla droids would have been fine to be kind of clunky and stupid. I think that if we saw a few more droidicas, or even if we saw a couple of those super battle droids that didn't show up till episode 2, even if we saw like maybe 1 or 2 of those and kind of got a second to realize, hey, these things are not just weak sauce. Like some of these things are actually something we should fear. I think it would have been fine to have the vanilla droids be kind of dumb and stupid, because it does add a little bit of comedy here and there, even though it gets a little old pretty quickly.
Yeah, especially on multiple viewings. I do like the fighter ship droids, because I think they're called Viper droids, but I'm pretty sure that's wrong. That's what I kind of call them, I guess, in my head.
I think that's what.
Oh, really? Wow,
Yeah,
I pulled that out of my ass.
Yeah, I think that's real. I think that's what they're actually called.
But I do like how they're their own being, and they're also like a fighter ship. It's kind of like a transformer, I guess. So I do like those droids, the ship droids that move around, and I guess they communicate as well.
Right.
So sticking to the story, we rendezvous up with the Queen, and I always think it's funny, like as they were deciding to leave, obviously you got Padme, who unbeknownst to us is the real Queen, but she's playing a handmaiden.
She's got to be the worst queen of all time, and there's more to that later, but I never thought about it till the time I was watching it for this. That is her entire idea of what she's doing is the dumbest thing in the world. But anyway, continue. We'll get to that. I'll talk more about that later.
I always laugh at the line that the decoy queen, she's having a conversation with the governor, and she basically says, "All right, well, we're peacing out. Good luck, dude. Peace out."
Yeah.
And just kind of leaves him there, like, bye. I always kind of get a kick out of that. Like, what if the governor guy wanted to come along? You just, I don't know.
Yeah. So the whole thing is that
I felt bad for him.
The whole thing is that Queen Amidala she needs to go to Coruscant, where's the Galactic Senate, and she needs to represent Naboo in order to get some peace treaty signed with the Separatists, which is the Nemoidians. So she decides she's going to leave the planet because things are getting a little tense. Things are getting kind of,
complete her case.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So she decides she's going to leave. So that's when, and of course, Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan show up, and they're like, yeah, we need to go. We need to go get this treaty signed. And they all get on a ship, a bright, shiny, metallic ship, and they fly off. And
we're introduced to R2-D2.
Yeah.
Did you like? I like R2 being. I mean, how is she going to introduce him? Honestly, I like R2's intro. I think it sometimes, graphically or visually, whenever they're repairing the ship, the shield generator's been hit. It does kind of look weird. R2 rolling around on the top of the roof of the ship, going hauling ass.
Yeah.
But I like R2 in this scene. I do like, the intro. Jar Jar
Yeah,
going, "Hello, Royals."
I like the way he's introduced. It's a hell of a lot better than 3PO is introduced. But I like it because R2 is my favorite droid of any of the Star Wars droids. He's my favorite. So getting a chance to see him kind of be a little bit of a hero, that's always great. It's always great to see R2 be praised for doing something awesome.
This is my favorite droid. Got my
but I'm talking like pre-Disney, pre-Disney.
I love K2SO. He R2's obviously the best. K2, I like K2 more than C3PO, but that's just me.
I mean, if R2 had a voice that wasn't just beeps and boops, he would probably be just as witty as K2 was.
Yeah,
he'd
be
the same way. They're the same attitudes, just one can represent it a little better.
I've thought about that several times, where basically K2 is exactly the same, personality-wise as R2 with a voice. Yeah. So back to the story, the hyperdrive has been damaged. It needs to be repaired. So got to go to Tatooine. It's controlled by the Hutts, but it's in a remote system. I always like they get to the planet and they're disembarking for whatever reason. Jar Jar's going with them, and Obi-Wan's staying behind. But then Padme walks out, and the Queen is curious about the planet. I always wonder, did Qui-Gon know? And this is always like a point of debate. You don't think Qui-Gon knew the whole time?
No, I don't think so. Well, it's possible. It's possible. And the reason being because, so the whole thing, for any of you who somehow may not have seen this movie, spoilers, because I know we've already spoiled, probably, we're almost at half the movie at this point, but spoilers for the big twist that Lucas had to have at the end of the movie. So hang on. First off, Padme, who is played by Natalie Portman, up to this point in the movie, she is nothing more than the Queen's right hand maid, basically. She's always standing right there with the Queen, always voicing her opinion whenever the Queen makes a decision, which is kind of weird. But it's revealed at the very end of the movie that Padme is actually Queen Amidala, and that the woman who has been queen the whole movie is just a decoy. And this is, as I was saying earlier, how Padme's entire idea is terrible, and she's got to be one of the worst queens of all time. Because if you think about it, like, let's imagine that Padme is nowhere around, and out of nowhere, the Queen is called to make some important decision for that planet. She does not make those decisions, if I'm correct here. Like, all the authority falls upon Padme. Yeah, right. The decoy does not actually get to make those decisions. So if something were to happen to Padme and she was not around, I don't understand how, I guess I don't fully understand all the inner workings of a monarchy, but that just doesn't make sense to me at all. This whole idea that she can have her decoy be the face and everything just goes smoothly. It doesn't seem like it would work that way.
I always laugh. It's funny whenever R2's all dirtied up and they're like, this droid deserves our gratitude. Padme, clean this droid up best you can.
That's another thing.
What? Like
this
what balls does that queen have?
This is some true dedication to a role. That's what that is where the decoy is like, yeah, bitch. Yeah, I'm the real queen.
Who's he selling it to? It's just Qui-Gon and if you tell me they don't trust Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, they're the only other ones on the ship other than Jar Jar, but I guess, because he's a Sith Lord, you can't trust him.
Right.
But right. I every single time I laugh, I'm like, what balls does she have to tell the actual queen to clean R2-D2 up?
Yeah.
But
you were just mentioning how Qui-Gon gets off the ship. They're on Tatooine. Qui-Gon gets off the ship along with Padme and Jar Jar.
And R2.
And R2. And that is the single biggest problem when it comes to Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan's relationship in this movie. Because there is no reason, and if I could have a conversation with George Lucas, I mean, first off, I would give nothing but praise to the man, even if there are things that I hate about these movies. I would just, if I had one question to ask him, it would be, please, why in the hell did you have Obi-Wan stay on that ship?
I mean, I think there is a reason. I mean, I
don't think so.
From their perspective, they're on the run and they're time critical and there's a threat looming. Half of them is going. The queen needs protection. I mean, that's kind of why they're there. So but Qui-Gon needs to get the shit together to get the ship fixed. So he's out on the mission while Obi-Wan's standing guard of the queen. I mean, it makes sense to me. I don't know.
But
that's the answer George Lucas is going to give you.
Well, yeah. But think about it this way: what sort of positive impact does Jar Jar have on the things that happen? Like, what is something that he alone does that progresses the story at all? Because
you know the answer to that. It's because it's a movie for kids and Jar Jar needs to be in the shot.
It's a movie for kids that is focused on political drama and trade disputes and embargoes. Just like, let's just run through that real quick. It is a movie for children.
You don't have to convince me of what this storyline is. I know what this storyline is. It's
like
shit.
It's like if a kid goes to daycare and the person running the daycare decides to show them C-SPAN
and how to do your taxes.
Yeah, like that's what the daycare instructor has.
Kids, hope you brought your W-2s. We're gonna fill out 1040s.
Like it's the dumbest thing in the world that Jar Jar is sent along to help them, and you have to think, like, there was so much hype around this movie to finally see, a young Obi-Wan Kenobi, which I think that outside of, of course, Luke Skywalker or Darth Vader, I think Obi-Wan's the best character in Star Wars.
He's
I
certainly
think
top 5 for sure.
Yeah. But I think that there was so much hype around, we finally will get to see this young Obi-Wan, and he's in this movie for about the same amount of time that Poe Dameron is in Episode 7.
Yeah, for meaningful stuff.
Yeah. It sucks. It sucks that this character is relegated to just sitting in a ship while Jar Jar Binks gets to go step and poop and get shocked by a pod racer beam. It just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. And I hate that. It's probably the worst thing about this movie to me. I think that if they had just had Obi-Wan go off the ship with Qui-Gon, and if Jar Jar had been maybe a little bit more intelligent, and maybe he could be on the one on the ship that's having conversations with Qui-Gon, along with whatever the soldiers that were on that ship, I think it would have been fine, because it just would have worked a lot better. I think we could have had more development for Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan.
I register your complaint, but see my previous answer. He was there to protect the Queen. But
yeah,
I'm not trying to defend it in any way. I do agree that a lot of issues are with that, and that's kind of like how you were kind of hinting at. If I think, because there's the one of the biggest arguments is like, well, there's no main character to this movie. Like, who's the main character? So yeah, I agree with you in that aspect that like we should have focused more on the development, on the relationship of Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, and let that be kind of what the center.
Yeah.
You could have Anakin in there, sure. Like if you're gonna make this kind of movie, granted, I would have made it any better, but if it was me, I would have wanted to have Anakin, in teenager, kind of already engulfed in Jedi training kind of thing. But for this particular movie, they should have focused more on the Obi-Wan Kenobi and Qui-Gon and let that be the center instead of it being scattered,
Yeah, because it certainly would have helped the end of this movie a lot better.
Yep. So, Jar Jar stepping in poop. Very hilarious scene there. On our way to look for parts for a hyperdrive. And, Nubian, we have lots of that. I love Watto. Besides that he's, with adult lenses on, he's a Jewish French guy, slave owner.
Yeah.
I love Watto. He looks great. He sounds great. His scruff, the way he moves, the way that the artist got Watto to look, I love him.
Yeah, I agree. I think that Watto is one of the better new additions. I'm not really crazy about a race that is resistant to force powers, but I guess it's one of those things that when you're in Star Wars, which is this vast, this almost endless galaxy filled with millions upon millions of races and different types of aliens, it's hard to believe that there wouldn't be something out there that is resistant against it.
Well, that's because his species has some type of metachlorians in there, don't you know?
Oh, shut the hell up.
Yeah, we're getting to that.
We'll get to that.
That's coming up. That's coming up hot on my notes. We're getting there.
That's later. That's a big thing later.
Yep. And then so with the introduction of Watto, we also get intro Jake Lloyd, Anakin Skywalker. Are you an angel? James, are you an angel?
Jesus Christ. Oh, man.
Just go ahead. Just let it out.
Jake Lloyd. I understand that guy has
I understand your predicament.
I understand that he has not had a very good life in the years since this movie's release. And I understand that this movie and the backlash of it and his performance in particular has probably caused him a lot of great problems.
Personally and mentally.
Mentally,
sure.
Yeah, everything.
And we're certainly not here to criticize or chastise a 10-year-old child actor.
Absolutely
by
not.
Any stretch of the imagination.
Absolutely not. Which is why I choose to chastise the 30, 40-year-old man who wrote him. George Lucas did such a terrible job with writing dialogue for Anakin that, and not only that, but since he was the director of this movie, I'm going to go ahead and throw double on him for directing this kid in such a poor manner, because you would have to be completely blind and deaf to not realize the just pure awfulness that this performance was. It is painful to sit through. It's painful to watch. It is hard to get through this movie, not just because the movie's dull, but because every second that this kid is on screen talking, it hurts.
It's a giant pothole
It
on top of an already bumpy road.
Yeah, it's painful.
I watched the behind the scenes, and you see there's a shot of this scene, the Are You an Angel scene, with 3 different child actors, and just from that, from what they released of the screenings for this, Jake was the worst out of the other 2.
Really,
the first kid, he's really more blonde than you would kind of want.
Mm-hmm.
He's like really blonde, but he had like just in the quick outtake of this, what's it called, casting. I'm not a just the quick shot they give. You could tell that kid should have been picked to be Anakin, because even Jake Lloyd, like whenever he delivers it, it's just all weird and scatic. I can't even describe it, but yeah, we can't chastise Jake Lloyd. This all does fall onto George Lucas, but on the same time, Jake Lloyd does not do a good job.
No, definitely not.
With this role.
And it is confusing. Like I've said before, man, there are so many things about this movie that just, it doesn't, design choices and some narrative choices that just don't really make any sense at all. And the casting of Jake Lloyd is one of those things.
George Lucas watched Jingle All the Way, and he's like, "That's who I want."
Man, I forgot he was in that movie.
Jingle All the Way, baby.
I forgot. Yeah. I loved that movie when I was little, but I
did too.
I forgot that he was in that.
Turbo Man.
Turbo Man.
Turbo Man. Yes. Yeah.
Schwarzenegger and Sinbad. Can't get any better than that.
Yeah. What a callback. Oh yeah, Sinbad was in there.
Yeah. Yeah. So not only is the performance by Jake Lloyd just absolutely god awful, but there is no chemistry whatsoever between he and Padme, which we as viewers would come to eventually learn that this was the mother of Luke and Leia. So
it's interesting you say chemistry, because even watching this movie as a younger audience with younger eyes, it's so bizarre to me seeing a 9-year-old kid and what is supposed to be like a 16-year-old queen, like, even though she looks 20. She Natalie Portman's always looked older than what she is.
Yeah.
Because she's a very beautiful actress. But seeing a 9-year-old kid flirting, George Lucas's idea of flirting with someone older, it's just so bizarre to see on screen.
Yeah. Yeah. And Natalie Portman's performance was also pretty terrible. I just want to go ahead and say that. I don't know how you feel about that one, but rewatching it for this, it was clear that Lucas didn't know how to direct actors, because pretty much everybody in this movie at some point or another had a really bad take, and I just don't know how they slipped by. I don't know how it didn't catch Lucas's eye at some point.
There's so many factors into that, because they're all, it's a lot of green screen, so it's like, how much emotion can you get from an actor who's not interacting with an environment, as you would be kind of used to on a movie set. And then you have George Lucas is notorious for not being an actor's director, so on the 7th take of something, if he says, faster and more intense, it's like, how much faster and more intense can you really deliver at this point with that script and with what's kind of at place and what So again, this kind of leads into core fundamental problems of this movie.
Yeah.
But trying to move along, let me try to nitpick. We get introduced to Sebulba, who I really enjoy. I really like his physique and his structure, walking around on his hands, using his feet to do things and drive pod races and eat.
Yeah.
So
he's another unique, pretty interesting alien design that was introduced.
Oh yeah, I really like him. Like I said, I like his look a lot. Let me get your opinion, your thoughts. This is kind of a big topic debate. The Immaculate Conception of Anakin. What just overall, yes or no? Was that a smart move on Lucas?
I mean, yeah, and the reason being because I don't see a way that Lucas could have explained it other than that. I think that from the beginning, when it comes to even with Luke, there's always been that sort of religious parallel where there's sort of this savior imagery, I guess you could say.
Mm-hmm.
So it's only natural that that would kind of that would have somewhere that it originated from. And I think that the conception of Anakin and the birth of him is sort of along those same lines. I don't have a problem with it. I think that it's kind of awkward to come out of nowhere. Really, I think what happened was that Lucas came up with the idea of how Anakin was created, and then he decided he had to write around that, which is where midichlorians came into the whole thing. Because
so that's my thing is like, did he view this Immaculate Conception and midichlorians in the same hand? And it's like they're inseparable. So. Like you could have had the Immaculate Conception, thing going on without the midichlorians. Like George, just you don't need midichlorians to explain Anakin's birth and coming into existence.
Yeah, I think that the midichlorian thing was because you could easily eliminate the entire concept of the midichlorians and what the whenever Qui-Gon asks Shmi, who's Anakin's mother, when he asks her, what about the boy's father, and she explains everything to him, there's sort of a hint that she is hiding something from him. Mm-hmm. So it could have kind of left it up to viewer interpretation, like, was there actually a father and she's just too ashamed to talk about it, so she just kind of pretends that he doesn't exist?
Yeah, it doesn't need to be explained. It doesn't. I really enjoy that scene actually, because the music hits right. Shmi, the actress that plays Shmi, really delivers those lines pretty well to Qui-Gon, in my opinion. Yeah,
so that's one of those things that really should have been left alone, but instead George had to introduce some sort of new concept to explain how the Force works, which is something that I don't think anybody has ever wanted to see. Like, I've never wanted to know, how does the Force work? I think that that's at the very, very, very bottom of the tier of things that I want explained in Star Wars. I don't want to know how it works. I think that it, as this mystical force that you can choose to believe in or you can choose not to believe in, it is perfectly adequate.
I literally have nothing to say because you said everything that I wanted to say.
Oh, well, hey, that's good. We agree on it. That's great. We agree on midichlorians.
Yeah. Yep. So during all this, we get introduced to C-3PO as well. It gets kind of choppy because it does a lot of cutting. There's a lot of sitting around and talking that goes on. They even cut to Coruscant. We get introduced to Coruscant and Darth Maul and Sidious in the flesh. Darth Maul has his longest lines of the film in this scene.
Yeah.
At last we will have our revenge. At last we will, take out the Jedi. And it's like, that's literally the longest line that he says. Film.
Yeah. So we get Darth Sidious, Darth Maul. We've also at some point throughout all this been introduced to Chancellor Palpatine. Or does he come later?
No, not Palpatine yet.
Okay. That's right. Yep. Palpatine doesn't show up till after the Tatooine stuff.
Yep. But we get, like I said, we get C-3PO, who, spoiler alert, was created by yours truly, Mr. Yippee Angel Anakin Skywalker.
Yeah. This is something that a lot of people get a little heated over. I don't mind it. I think that it was one of those things that, I guess if I had to give any sort of gripe about it, I think that C-3PO should have just been left out of the movie altogether. I don't think that that's a character we necessarily just had to have an explanation for who created him.
Right. Yeah. I don't think you can't have 3PO not appear in this movie for obvious nostalgic reasons. But if I was to have one gripe, I wish that he would have been at Watto's shop.
Yeah.
And you could have Anakin, construct them and take parts in and out and kind of have that be that, but not. I just don't like the idea of like Anakin starting at age 6, literally building brick by brick. C-3PO.
Because it's a little weird that 3PO is established as this sort of communication droid. Like he's he's meant primarily for like discussions. I can't remember what he's called, but he's sort of like a language droid.
Protocol.
Yeah, protocol. And it's kind of weird that a 6-year-old kid just built this protocol droid.
Yeah, and there's like thousands and millions of other C-3PO models throughout the galaxy, and lo and behold, the one that we follow and care about the most kind of does and looks the exact same. I mean, obviously he doesn't have the plating on that, but it's like he's perfect. Just as Natalie Portman says.
Yeah,
it's just really eyebrow raising. When you really sit and think about it.
It's a little weird.
Yep.
Just one of those
weird.
things that was kind of shoved into this movie that Lucas felt as if he had to explain everything, but in actuality, he didn't.
Yeah, so we get to that, I guess it's dinner scene with them again, sitting around and talking. Good God, that's all this freaking movie does is sit around and talk. However, I do like the idea, and this goes back to what we said about Qui-Gon kind of being essential to the plot. I do like the idea of the Force kind of being at work. There's a reason why they end up on Tatooine, and Anakin, saves them from the stupid dust storm. But there's a reason. So like all of the Force being at work thing. Granted, this scene is really long. It's probably like the longest exposition talking scene probably in this film. Sometimes I like watching it, sometimes I don't. Sometimes it's really long. It feels like the Council of Elrond scene in Lord of the Rings. It's just a lot of exposition.
Nerd. What we learn in that dinner scene is that Anakin he does pod racing. And that
he's the only human who can do it.
Yeah. There's a race coming up, and
tomorrow on Boonta, like tomorrow, like really tomorrow.
Like what a coincidence. But basically the prize money that you get from this contest or whatever would be enough to buy the part for the ship. So Qui-Gon's like, oh, the Force is causing all this to happen. So they decide that they're going to do it, and Anakin's going to sign up for it because he's got a pod racing ship that he's just been working on for God knows how long.
Speaking of working on, like, it gets fixed way too. If the race is indeed tomorrow, which it is, the pod racer gets fixed way too quick, and it gets like a fresh paint job. I've always hated. It's always bugged me how quick they fix that pod racer.
Yeah, I mean it's just one of the many instances in the Star Wars universe where things just happen coincidentally. Which is a big thing, like episode 7.
It would have been better if he would have just said, like 2 days, like 3 to 6, not literally the next day.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah,
but that does lead us to one of the good things. That probably, in my opinion, the second best thing of this film is the pod racing scene itself.
Right.
So you go ahead.
So the pod racing scene. Up until this viewing, I have thought that was the best part of this whole movie. That it was the coolest part. That it was probably the most unique thing introduced. Yet this time watching it, I was bored. I was bored out of my mind watching it. Maybe because I've just seen it too much. But the first time I saw the pod racing scene, I thought it was incredible. And I did notice what you were talking about last time, where it's always filmed left to right. Mm-hmm. And that was incredibly distracting. It was weird, kind of disorienting in a way.
Yeah, like it's literally weird on your eyeballs, just going from left to right. Especially the bigger TV you got, the worse it is, because then your eyes have to travel farther.
Yeah, but the pod racing scene, ultimately, it is really cool. It's a really awesome thing that Lucas introduced. I actually remember playing like the arcade video game where they actually had a pod racer you could sit in and play, and that was
and it
awesome.
had the actual throttles and the buttons.
Yes, that was insane.
That was awesome.
So much fun.
Lots of Republic credits on that in the arcade.
Yeah.
Agreed. The sound design is absolutely. I'll have this movie playing in the background, on mute, just to have something in the background. But no matter what I'm doing during the day, as soon as that pod race scene comes on, my stereo system goes on, and I'm blasting all my 7.1 that I've got while this is going on. Only other than the left to right thing, I don't like how some of the pods sound a little too similar to motorcycles.
Yeah, I kind of noticed that when I was watching it.
I wish they could have been a little bit different.
Yeah. And even though it is a race where they kind of go on the same circle-like track, I feel as if that scene does go on just a little bit too long. because I think it's almost 7 minutes.
Yeah, and also like with that, I think the timing, in universe, the timing of the race is a little off as well because Anakin starts so far back, and then by the second lap he's neck and neck, and then even whenever on the third lap his ship's breaking down in front of him. There's a shot when they're on the last final stretch. There's a wide shot of the pod racer of Anakin's catching up to Sebulba's, and it just in that shot you would think that he would just zip right by him, but then for the final 45 seconds of the race, he's just neck and neck. I'm like, but that shot just showed us him, zipping.
Yeah.
So the timing of the race is a little off, if you really want to sit down and study it. But yeah, in the eyes of kids and first time viewers and whatnot, pod race scene's freaking awesome.
Yeah.
Now
Ultimately,
you can argue
it's
you can argue that it's an unnecessary second act, but it's still a good scene. It still holds up. It's still awesome.
Yeah, because in a way, the I guess point of the movie still hasn't really happened. Because I don't really think there's much of a point to this entire movie. There isn't an A plot. There isn't really a B plot. There isn't a C plot. Every Star Wars film has sort of had a plot that we were reaching for. With episode
scrambled
4,
eggs.
Yeah, with episode 4, it's we got to go save the princess. And then once they did that, other things opened up. Episode 5, it was Luke has to go find Yoda. Han and Leia have to escape the Empire. That's it. 6 was we got to take down the Empire. It's a fairly simple plot. This one is more of, at the very beginning, we have two people that we've never met doing something with peace treaties. Now they're stranded, and now they are running away. They aren't really going anywhere specific, but they've crash landed on a planet. Now they got to now they've got a destination they got to go to. It's just
George Lucas he's quoted in the behind the scenes saying I may have gone too far in too many different places. Like he's literally quoted saying after his first screening, he's like, you can see the worried look in all their faces. Like it's not just George. They kind of know that it's a jumbled gobbledygook that they got going on. But nevertheless, we are going to continue on. Anakin, wins the race and all the wheeling and dealing that took place works out in the favor of the Jedi, which I always liked kind of the betting. And
sorry. And it should be mentioned that prior to the race, Qui-Gon also went back to Watto and added a extra bet that if Anakin were to win, that Anakin will be free of his slavery deal, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
They were not able to
boy and read his mother.
Yeah, they were not able to bargain the mother. So at this point, once the race has been won, Anakin gets all the credits, the money, and he has his freedom. However, his mother is not able to leave freely as well. She is also she's going to remain as a slave. And
that leads me into one of my probably my third favorite scene in this film, and it's definitely emotional. And it's Jake Lloyd's best scene in this film is when Anakin and his mom separate. It's shot perfectly. John Williams, sneaky bastard, he hits you right in the gut with the theme from the Star Wars theme. I love the Smee saying "Don't look back." And that's literally that sets the foundation of who Darth Vader is, because Darth Vader does not look back. That's kind of how he is once he becomes Darth Vader. So I cried literally a couple times whenever I watched that scene. Me personally, I didn't necessarily grow up with my mom full time, so it kind of, for me personally, kind of hits me, in the gut. I think that the scene where he is leaving Shmi, where she tells him don't look back, is great, very well done. What I don't like is prior to that, whenever they're in the house and Qui-Gon tells Anakin, "You're free, you're good to go," and when it's finally told to him she can't go with him, there is this. And I don't know if it's the way that the scene was edited. I don't know what was going on here, but Jake Lloyd basically goes from, "Oh, I'm really sad that mom can't come with me," to the next cut he's in the room with 3PO and he's just totally up and happy again. And he's like, yeah. I'm leaving to go be a Jedi. I get to go see stars and pilot spaceships.
deuces, and then he leaves. And
Make sure mom doesn't sell you or anything.
yeah, and he goes outside and then he's sad all over again. It was weird, and the editing is very poor in that scene. And on top of the performance and the writing of that character, but it was odd, man. It's just one of the many things that are weird about this movie.
And I don't like how it's weird because it's shot from the perspective of 3PO. Like it's like like if you notice the camera, it's from 3PO's perspective, which I don't think we've ever done that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree. That was a weird scene, just to kind of put it that way. So long story short, we get to Coruscant. Finally, you would think by now, it's the opening of, I guess we're in Act 3 at this point. You would think that the tension's on, that we're building up to something, but
we're somewhere.
My God. Aside from Coruscant looking magnificent, I love the idea. I've always loved the idea of Coruscant being one entire city, the whole planet being one city.
Yeah.
But my God, what happens except for sitting around and talking? Sitting around and talking.
Forgot
Palpatine.
to mention. Well, before as Qui-Gon and Anakin are leaving Tatooine, that is the first time that they're attacked by Darth Maul. So the first action scene regarding Darth Maul happens as Qui-Gon and Anakin are getting up on the ship to leave. They've installed the hyperdrive thing, whatever it was, and
The hyperdrive generator.
yeah, and basically it's this real quick, like 30-second fight between the two. Qui-Gon force jumps.
It's not
on
even 30 seconds, dude. It's like 10.
Yeah, basically it's just enough to see half of Darth Maul's lightsaber.
To tease, just one half of his lightsaber.
Yeah, but Qui-Gon jumps up onto the ship. They get away. He's all out of breath and tired, and that's when we get the meeting. The very first time that Obi-Wan Kenobi comes face to face with Anakin Skywalker. This was one of those things that was in the trailers that everybody got hyped all over. Little did they know that Obi-Wan was going to be in less than half the movie, but this is where it happens. And at this point, cool. Hey, it's neat to see where these characters first crossed paths, but I think that the sort of thought that everyone's going through as this movie, like by the time we hit this point in the movie, people are sitting here just thinking, I don't see how Jake Lloyd or this kid on screen is somehow going to become Darth Vader. Because
it's the most awkward handshake in film history is Anakin shaking Obi-Wan's hand.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah. But back to Coruscant. We're on Coruscant now. We meet Palpatine.
Yep. We'd certainly meet a lot of people because that's all we freaking do is sit in meetings.
Yeah.
We do get introduced to Palpatine, and he kind of he basically this is why I love Palpatine, because like I said, the start of this whole show was how the plot of this movie was setting good foundations, because the whole purpose of this is Palpatine is scheming. Palpatine is scheming. He wants a smoking gun of them blockading this planet and then kind of starting a conflict so he can move into power.
Yeah.
That's all well and dandy, but we didn't need all that extra trash. Basically,
it's a great idea, just poorly executed. That's all it really is.
Yep. So you can see I like the whole political aspect of Palpatine plotting and scheming. So we get him, and then we get the Jedi Council, who are basically just a bunch of dicks, honestly. Like there's nothing grandiose in this film whatsoever about the Jedi. A quick question for you: Do you? I'm sure you recall, but what do you think about them taking out Puppet Yoda? Because the original cut had Puppet Yoda looking a little weird, and then CGI Yoda. What's your thoughts on that?
I think that for the prequel films, CGI Yoda is a much better option because CGI Yoda looks a lot younger than Puppet Yoda. Looks a lot younger than Puppet Yoda could ever look. I don't think that they could ever design a Yoda that would look good as a puppet that is supposed to be younger. So the CGI Yoda does not bother me with the prequel movies.
Yeah, I was more bothered by the Puppet Yoda, even growing up as a kid, knowing that Yoda, was a puppet, and I didn't like it because the Puppet Yoda looked really off-putting. Something was weird about his head and the way they had him moving,
and the eyes. I always felt like the eyes.
Yeah, his eyes were too big. I don't know, but yeah, I agree. CGI Yoda works. I'm glad that they decided to dub CGI Yoda over the puppet.
Yeah.
We get introduced to the prophecy by Mace Windu, which I'm just going to glance over. I'm sure that you like and agree with that because we hinted on that with the Chosen One.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. The Senate scene, for all the flack that Phantom Menace gets about the politics, I do like the Senate scene, like it's set. I know it's made in the computer, but I do like that we get to be introduced to the Senate, and we even get like a little C-SPAN Weibo thing from Flubber floating around, kind of broadcasting this.
Yeah.
It is yellow too, so he looks just like Weibo from Flubber. Shout out to Flubber.
Yeah. So I guess the whole point that Palpatine is trying to do is he convinces Padme to put all of the power of the Senate in the hands of Chancellor Valorum, and then somehow he convinces the whole Senate to tear down, to turn against Chancellor Valorum, and by doing that, it then puts Palpatine in charge of Coruscant. Am I right on that? Because I always kind of blank out whenever that whole section happens in the movie. But that's pretty much what I remember.
I hate it doesn't this vote of no confidence thing.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Fuck off. Like seriously. You have thousands of star systems and you have one queen that pitches a hissy fit and moves forward with a call for a vote of no confidence, and Chancellor Valorum blah, blah, blah. And then just magically it happens. Like imagine if that happened today. Like obviously Trump, President Trump is, gets shit on literally every day. So imagine if just a senator just one day decides to step up and I move forward with a vote of no confidence in President Trump's, course of action. I suggest new leadership.
And
it just happens.
He's kicked out.
It's like, okay, well, she didn't like it, so you got to go out of, let's I fuck off. Like, I don't understand it.
Wherever George Lucas is, if that were to happen, he would be sitting there watching it on TV or reading it on Twitter being like, somebody gets it. Somebody understands the way politics work.
And then a fun little Easter egg. We get E.T. E.T. has Senate meetings and Senate members in this universe. So kudos to that, George and Steven Spielberg, for being BFFs.
Yeah. But the whole senator council thing that's going on is it just happens. The real important thing is that Qui-Gon then goes to the Jedi Council. He says, hey, I found this kid on Tatooine that has the highest midichlorian count that we've ever encountered, even higher than Master Yoda.
And he says, I believe he was conceived by the midichlorians. Yeah. Yeah,
even throwing some shade on Yoda there. And they are, of course, skeptical about it. But Qui-Gon says we'll bring the boy before you and you can evaluate him because he needs to be put through training. And long story short, they decide, no, he's too old. He's got a lot of issues hidden deep down that really do not need to be brought to light. Specifically, Mace Windu believes that Anakin is not fit to be a Jedi. And Qui-Gon, in what is probably one of the most awkward situations between him and Obi-Wan, he's just basically like, I'll take him as my apprentice. And they're like, but you have one. And Obi-Wan's just kind of standing there in the background watching this happen. And Qui-Gon's like, oh, he's good. He's good.
It's like, what am I, chopped liver all of a sudden? Damn.
Yeah. It's so stupid. It's like, it's the most awkward thing in the world. It really is.
Well, the code forbids it.
Whatever. They're like, you have an apprentice. He's like, oh, he's ready. And Obi-Wan's like, dude, I've been sitting in a ship for the past 3 days. I haven't done anything. You haven't taught me anything.
I do like the conversation that I believe takes place afterwards. It's Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan on the balcony, and Obi-Wan says something to the effect of, the boy is dangerous. They all sense it. Why can't you?
Yeah.
And so that kind of leads back to, the Force being at work, working through Qui-Gon to get Anakin kind of in the ball game for the long run with ultimately his destiny. So I like that scene with them on the balcony and kind of questioning why Qui-Gon is the way he is. That's really the only backdrop we get of Qui-Gon and his kind of rogue character about him. Like he's a stern Jedi, but that's really all we get about him.
Yeah,
And then for whatever,
sorry,
sorry, go ahead. No, you
I
go
think that little conversation would have worked a lot better if we had had more development on the relationship between Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon. Because up to that point, had they, spent most of their screen time together in this movie, we would see them as this very, very, very close master and apprentice. And we'd see a lot of the influences of Qui-Gon on Obi-Wan. Yet in this moment, they're now two completely different people. And it's just weird. It doesn't fit. It doesn't fit with the rest of the movie.
No, yeah, I can understand that. And then for whatever reason, I've decided to go back to Naboo.
Yeah.
The courts take even longer to decide things. Like what was the point of going? Why couldn't they have gotten to so they couldn't send a transmission from Naboo? Is kind of the ultimate thing. So why couldn't when you were couldn't call for help? So they kind of answered that in Tatooine. It makes no militaristic logical sense to go back to Naboo.
Yeah.
Why?
And what essentially happens is that Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan and Anakin, because Anakin's now coming with them instead of staying safe in, the Jedi Council, even if they don't like him, it's been decided that Qui-Gon's going to take him as an apprentice.
He could have gone to an orphanage and
he could have just sat somewhere. He could have just chilled out, but instead he goes with Qui-Gon. With Qui-Gon knowing that this is going to be a dangerous mission, and he basically tells Anakin, "You're just going to watch everything I do, and you're not going to move unless I tell you to do it." And this is where Qui-Gon becomes useless, in my opinion.
And he tells him more about midichlorians in that scene too.
Yeah, and basically midichlorians are some sort of genetic thing that
microscopic life forms.
Yeah, the higher midichlorian count you have, the more powerful in the Force you are. So basically, if you watch the original trilogy and you fantasize about being a Jedi, this movie kind of takes a shit all over that idea and tells you, well, it all depends on your blood count. All depends on the cells in your blood. So get over that dream.
I always felt like Jurassic Park has that dino DNA. Like I always felt like that's what midichlorians look like.
Yeah, it's kind of like that, I would imagine. But yeah, Qui-Gon tells Anakin, you're going to follow us and you're just going to watch everything I do. And you're not going to move unless I tell you to.
Yep.
And
stay in that cockpit, Anakin.
Yeah, and they end up going back to Naboo. And that's where we have the big reveal. Because
big reveal. Padme was actually the queen all along.
Yeah, and we find this out because there is now a peace treaty between the people of Theed and the Gungans, because apparently they've hated each other for years and years and years, and they finally decide, hey, all these separatists are coming to attack, and if it affects them, it's going to affect us, so we should team up and take down this common enemy.
And Jar Jar is so qualified, he gets promoted to Bombad General.
Yeah, he just becomes a general in all this.
He's qualified. He's very tactical.
Whatever he did to piss them off must have been so minor, like they just blew it out of proportion. Because I can tell you right now that if I ran some sort of society and somebody did something bad enough to get banished, there's no way.
Get banished.
Yeah, to be banished. Like there's no way that if they just managed to fix a little problem I've been having, that I didn't immediately go, hey, you know what? You can be one of the top leaders in my army. Yeah.
Yeah, you can make military decisions on the battlefield when time is essential.
This dude can barely make the decision to put his left foot before his right foot, and you're going to put him in charge of your military. Yeah. Great. Great job, Nixon.
That's kind of they formulate a plan to kind of take back and knock out the Ex Machina droid control ship that kind of has the reset button with the droids. The fighting is kind of similar to the Battle of Endor, where you have a space battle going on, and you got like two other side plots going on. Luke and Palpatine and Vader, and then the Ewoks and the Stormtroopers on the planet. So it's that's what he kind of, I guess, intended to mirror.
Yeah, and you've also got the whole thing with Padme's little squad, like attacking the palace on Theed or something.
Right, yeah, because they got another one that splits off with them, but that intros us to, thank God, we've the last 10% of this movie
Excellent. Yeah,
was
yeah,
the
great.
most anticipated 10% of a movie that you could ever ask for, because if you were able to trudge through the other 90% of this film, God bless.
Yeah.
Holy fucking shit. Do not bleep out my curse words. Darth fucking Maul, ladies and gentlemen. John Williams, Duel of Fate. That guy, that sneaky, crazy bastard. I love this scene. It is without doubt the best scene, best lightsaber fight, hands down. I mean, I might feel indifferent about that as we move to another movie, but James, take it away.
So when Darth Maul finally comes on screen, um, Qui-Gon turns to Anakin, who is sitting in a cockpit of a Naboo speeder, the yellow one, and R2-D2's in the droid slot. And Qui-Gon's like, hide in that cockpit. And Anakin decides, oh, I'm going to turn the bitch on. And he flies out and joins up with the ship squadrons as they go up to destroy the central hub, the Nexus that controls all the droids. So that's our space battle. And it's not the most exciting space battle of the series, of course, especially because every time something neat happens, you've got Jake Lloyd yelling and howling in the background.
Yippee!
Yippee! Or the line you love so much, which is, now this is pod racing.
It's the worst line in this film.
It's pretty bad. It's up there. But all of these lackluster action scenes that have happened in this movie, including the big Gungan war on the Naboo planet surface, the spaceship battle, all of that is sort of forgotten about because of this sequence with Darth Maul. And that is where Obi-Wan, Qui-Gon face off against this mysterious Sith Lord who has a double-edged lightsaber, which was something that we had never seen at the time, was completely new, completely just out of the blue. And it is such a well choreographed move. And I know that a lot of people get really pissy about the lightsaber fights of the prequels.
Because it's choreographed so well.
Yeah, but I don't mind it.
But all fucking lightsaber fights are choreographed. I don't know if you knew this or not.
Yeah, I don't mind it so much because to me, it's an earlier time. Like it's when lightsaber fighting was a little bit different. I think that with the original trilogy era, because so many Jedi had just been massacred by Darth Vader, that lightsaber fighting in a way had become sort of this more guerrilla style fighting where it's like you just have to fight to fend for your life. Mm-hmm. But in the prequels, it was more of just form. It was like form. every Jedi had their own way of fighting in a lightsaber duel. So it doesn't bother me all that much. And of course, yes, John Williams has probably his best song in any Star Wars film. It's awesome. It's a great scene. I love the way that it works. I love the way that it flows throughout all the different parts of this, I guess, ship hangar or whatever you want to call it.
Like a power vortex thing. Yeah, I've never understood the scene of it. Yeah. It does the sequence does kind of hiccup with these laser door things. I've never heard a good explanation of what those doors do and what the purpose is, other than obviously, for the film to separate Obi-Wan from the action.
Yeah, I don't know. That's one of those things that I'll give it a slide in terms of, logical design, logical architecture. I don't think it matters so much because it's still such a great scene, even though Qui-Gon has not been a compelling character up to this point. Just that whole thing is awesome. I
love him taking a Tim Tebow, taking a knee, and really, I think he knows it's about to come, so he's like really trying to get himself prepared for his end.
Yeah,
looking back on it, and then you have Darth Maul there, just like a fucking tiger in a cage, just ready to freaking go, and Obi-Wan is way off in the back. I don't know why he couldn't use his force running, because they introduced that in this film as well, but he didn't. I guess he was all out of force juice from playing Battlefront. His
midi-chlorians had to recharge.
Yeah, that, or he was playing Battlefront 2 and ran out of loot crate, credit.
Yeah, something like that.
Who knows? So other than that little hiccup in the sequence, we get to the end of Qui-Gon. And then I think whenever Obi-Wan, when the doors reopen again for Obi-Wan, I think Obi-Wan taps into the dark side. This just that first shot of him coming out of the gate and just going to town, giving anything he's got to Darth Maul. I think he's tapping into the dark side a little bit.
Yeah, I think that. I mean, of course, the scene itself as a whole is phenomenal, but the moment that Qui-Gon is killed by Darth Maul, and the little laser doors or whatever open up, and Obi-Wan sprints through, going straight for Darth Maul, that scene goes from being like a high 9 to like a 15.
Yeah, it's so good.
It's incredible. It's incredible, and it's one of those things where even though Qui-Gon has had very little character development, and the relationship between he and Obi-Wan was not at the point that I wish it had been, it all kind of fades away in that moment, because mainly because of Ewan McGregor's performance, that he really cared for Qui-Gon. We didn't necessarily get to see it, but we know it just in that moment. And I wish that we had kind of seen a little more of that throughout the whole movie, but it's great that it happens when it does.
Yeah, I always, every time I watch that scene and him, it's so good. Damn, George Lucas, you're a genius. Like, Darth Maul knows the door's about to open, so the lightsaber turns on, and then Obi-Wan's turns on, then the door opens. I always think how vulnerable Obi-Wan is, because he's still a Padawan. He just watched his master get murdered, stabbed through the chest by this freakazoid, demonic-looking. I wouldn't want to fight that dude, even if I was a Jedi Master. Like, I always think about how vulnerable he is, and it just adds so much more emotion. If the rest of that movie could have just glanced that little bit of involvement that you feel with a character, this would have been a lot better movie.
Yeah.
But anyways, I digress. We get a opposite end of the battle ensues real quick, and Obi-Wan does not have the high ground initially.
No, but he's Jesus, so it's fine. He only needs the high ground when it's super important. If whoever he's fighting has the high ground, he'll still kill him, because
only when he was facing whiny little bitches.
Yeah, when he was fighting Darth Maul, he didn't have the high ground yet, he won. And when he was fighting Grievous, he didn't have the high ground, but he won. It doesn't matter. The high ground is only an advantage when Obi-Wan uses it. But yeah, basically Obi-Wan kills Darth Maul. He's victorious, cuts him right in half. Darth Maul falls into this pit of nothingness, I assume. Apparently not, because he comes back later.
Apparently not. Yep.
In another movie. But elsewhere, Anakin is able to help the fleet destroy the Nexus controlling all the droids. So then, because
he tried spinning, because that's a good trick.
God, yeah. He did stuff. He did some stuff, and he yelled and yippied about it. He yippied all the way home, basically. And
it's poking up from the inside, because our little 9-year-old got lucky and got through all the shields, and by chance shot off 2 laser bolts and hit cripple. Yeah, I can't even. And I'm not even gonna hit on the Jar Jar battle sequence. It was cool starting up with starting up the shields, and that was cool. And the initial,
and it's cool when
they're on.
It's cool when they're walking through the fog, like the Gungans are walking through the fog, and it's quiet and eerie. That's cool.
I don't like that scene. I don't like it too much.
I like it.
It looks too fake.
I think it's great up until we focus on Jar Jar throughout the battle, and then all his mishaps. And
Jar Jar killed more droids accidentally than any stormtrooper in the entire original trilogy.
He didn't do it accidentally. He did it using the Force.
I forgot.
If any of you are not familiar, with the Jar Jar is a Sith Lord thing, basically it was happening in the lead up to Episode 7, and it was
intrigue yourself.
It was so well written. Like, you can find it. I think it was on a Reddit post, but you can find it somewhere. It was
because it's like a fighting style of clumsiness. Like, it's legit. It's a legitimate thing. Like of some kind of harnessing this gestury, clumsy fighting style, and you're. Yeah. I can't even describe it, because it's not as ridiculous as it sounds.
Yeah. So all the droids get shut off. Yay, Gungans win. They've held off the Separatist fleet. Padme is able to lead her squad to victory. I don't even know what they were doing. I think that they basically were able to capture the Nemoidians or something, like
they got
capture
to
some
the
of them.
phone room and got them.
Yeah. So I guess they're going to be in custody now, maybe.
Yeah.
Basically, it's just a big happy ending, except for
You
Qui-Gon, who's dying
you
on
can
the floor.
kiss your trade franchise goodbye.
Yeah.
I don't understand how agree with you the council does. Skywalker will be your apprentice. Like, weren't y'all so adamant about him not being? And what was the switch? Nothing changed really.
I don't know. But as Qui-Gon's dying, Obi-Wan goes to him and he's all upset. And Qui-Gon basically just has Obi-Wan promise him that he'll train Anakin. And there's that. That's how we know that their paths are now connected, that Obi-Wan will be Anakin's master.
I do like that Obi-Wan becomes Anakin's master reluctantly.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like, I like how he's just not part of the system assigned to him through. I like how it is unusual and so that does kind of set a foundation somewhat subconsciously of how their relationship is, so to speak, from Anakin or from Obi-Wan's point of view.
Yeah. And I also really like Qui-Gon's funeral. I think that was a really emotional scene. Could have been a lot better, of course, if Qui-Gon had more development, but it is what it is. I think that Liam Neeson's performance of Qui-Gon was as good as it possibly could have been.
Yeah, I like it, other than the fact that every time I watch it, I think about how smelly watching a burning body from 5 feet away must be, and kind of how weird that is.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's there's a good line in there, with which was destroyed, the master of the apprentice, and Obi-Wan's in his hood, and then the camera kind of pans over, and you just see Palpatine just staring there. He just that devilish, plotting, scheming son of a bitch.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then because episode 4 ended in a celebration, then this movie ends in a celebration, and it's
celebrating the new alliance between the Gungan race and Boss Nass and the people of Theed. So Padme's group.
And Anakin gets a haircut.
Yeah, Anakin's got a little Padawan braid. He's standing next to Obi-Wan, and it's all smiles, and he throws a little, he kind of eye fucks Padme for a second, and that's the end of the movie. And
didn't you send me a funny meme about like
oh yeah. So the whole thing is like once they find out that Padme is actually the queen, there's sort of this thing of like, she's a queen and she probably has a lot of money, and you're telling me that there's no way she could have gone back to Tatooine and freed Anakin's mom?
Just purchased her the legal way in Tatooine systems.
Like, you're telling me that she couldn't have gone to Tatooine with millions upon millions of credits and said, Watto, I want that slave, and Watto would have been no.
It would have probably conflicted with Anakin's development as a Jedi, but again, that is just one of several thousand plot holes that you can pick apart throughout the entirety of this film. Again, it's kind of like death by a thousand needles to me. There are things that you can enjoy and overall enjoy the experience of this film, but my God, there is a lot of shit to shift through to get to those little gems.
Yeah.
Overall, sorry, I'd give this movie like a C-, I think.
C-. So yeah, I guess if we're on like final closing thoughts, I think that Star Wars The Phantom Menace is incredibly boring. It's a very dull movie that has a couple neat ideas, a couple neat sequences and places to take us to, but it's lacking so much in substance. What it has in sort of these shallow eye candy style things, it's lacking in everything else. I think that most of the performances are bad, with the exception of Ewan McGregor and Liam Neeson, and of course Ray Park as Darth Maul for the 2 lines that he has. But considering the fact that
he has 3 because he grunts whenever he dies.
Yeah. But considering he did all the choreography for Darth Maul and the facial expressions he has whenever he gets the chance to fully emote, those are all great. I think that Ian McDiarmid as Palpatine and the Darth Sidious, also great. He's one of the consistently great actors in these films. I just there were so many things about episode 1 that could have been done a lot better, and I think that George Lucas got so caught up in trying to establish every aspect of the world building that he forgot that the characters are more important to the Star Wars universe.
It's almost like they got put on the back burner.
Yeah. I think that out of the 3 prequels, this is definitely not the worst one, but it's a pretty lousy start to the trilogy, and really, it's a lousy start to all the movies if you were to watch them chronologically.
Especially considering the 3 movies that came before it.
Yeah.
I always go back and forth on which one I don't like more, because usually I settle on I don't like Attack of the Clones more. However, Attack of the Clones has story elements and thread and takes you from A to B to C to D, where this movie doesn't do that at all. However, I find more enjoyment out of this film for whatever reason than I do out of Attack of the Clones. Yeah. And I guess we'll kind of get more into that in the next time. Obviously, we're going to be reviewing Attack of the Clones next. Would be our next film. But I kind of share that same sentiment.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe this is the worst of the 3. I don't know. The more I think about it, it's hard. It's usually between this or Attack of the Clones. And I think that by the time we review Attack of the Clones, I'll know for sure. As of right now, you said C-, right?
I said C- overall.
I would go a D, like a flat D. I think
not a D plus, just a flat D.
Not a D plus. I think 65 out of 100 is about what I'm feeling. It's just because it's dull. And like I said before, all those things I said before, and when I was texting you earlier today, all I could say about it is that it's a train wreck. It just is. It's a train wreck of a movie that it feels so directionless. It feels like it's almost chasing its own tail, yet failing at every chance it gets. It's just a bummer. It's a bummer type of movie. Doesn't make me excited. Doesn't bring any sort of positive emotions at all.
Yep, like I said, I watched this movie and the prequels through many different lenses at times, depending on mood, depending on how I'm feeling, depending on what time of the year, the weather. I don't fucking know. Sometimes I enjoy watching it. Sometimes I can't stand it. And I'm sure everyone out there who remotely cares about Star Wars kind of has that same conception about the prequels. And you kind of alluded to it earlier. Like we kind of now with Disney taking over, we kind of view the prequels a little bit differently, especially with it being 15 to 20 years removed now from the prequels. Would you say that when they first came out, and obviously you were a kid, did you obviously loved the prequels and it's kind of gone downhill from then, or what has the ebb and flow of liking the prequels been for you? No,
I'd say that when I saw them as a kid, I liked them simply because I had toys of every single character. So I got so used to like coming up with my own stories of these characters that it was the only thing I focused on was that I was seeing those characters on a screen. I didn't care as to what was going on. I just cared about, hey, there's lightsabers, and I just want to watch that part of the movie. But actually, prior to Episode 7 coming out, I rewatched all of them because I usually rewatch every movie every year. And I remember rewatching Episode 1 probably 6-7 months before Episode 7 came out, and I hated it. I mean, I vehemently hated it. Like rants and just oh man, it was bad. It was one of those movies that I couldn't talk about it without just getting boiling angry over. And now it isn't like that anymore. It's just sort of I accept what it is. I don't like it. I'm not shy about the fact that I don't like it. I like aspects of it, but as a whole, I think that movie sucks. But I don't hate it. I don't, have this burning rage whenever I talk about it. It's just, there are things about it that bother me to this day. They bother me because I have no explanation as to why they happened, why those choices were made. And I'm never going to get those answers. So it's sort of just, I guess the best way to describe it is that it just kind of leaves me with a defeated feeling of like, yep, that's a movie.
It's funny now because like I couldn't imagine Star Wars without Jar Jar Binks now. And I know that pains me to even say, but it's like it's become such a joke, kind of like how you're talking about with the memes. It's like I wouldn't trade Jar Jar Binks for nothing in the world.
I wouldn't get
Because
rid
it's
of either.
it's such a joke, and it's a part of Star Wars now that there's no escape.
Yeah.
So
no, I agree.
as shitty as much as we like to talk shit about the prequels and especially Episode 1 and Jar Jar, I wouldn't trade it for the world now, just because of the community and what it's become.
Of course. Yeah, I agree with you on that. Even though I don't like this movie, I'm glad it exists because I couldn't imagine in it being any better. I couldn't imagine.
Yeah, we could sit here and try to
way.
rewrite it in a million different ways and a million different times, but it's at the end of the day, it's not the case.
Yeah, and I'll give George Lucas, even though there are things that I want to criticize him for, I will give him props for one thing when it comes to this prequel trilogy is that he had a vision and he stuck to it.
Mm-hmm.
There
and
was
he did listen to the fans. He didn't have Jar Jar in the second one, not nearly as much because of fan backlash.
He listened to the fans, but he never let that compromise the story that he wanted to tell. And that's what I will give him a lot of credit for, because we live in a day and age now where when film series like this come out, if the first one comes out and it's just completely torn apart by fans, then the writers and the directors for the next one, they'll completely rewrite the path that they want to take things on. And
they'll panic.
Yeah. And a lot of times that causes the films to be very disjointed. Disney. But, or DC even. But yeah, that's a problem that happens nowadays. And I think that Lucas at the time, he knew the story that he wanted to tell and he stuck to it. Even if people complained about Jar Jar, and he did listen in that regard, but overall, the story that he wanted to tell is the story that he told, and I'll give him props for that. So,
I certainly agree. I have mad props, mad respects for Mr. George Lucas. He is the creator of it all, the best, most celebrated independent filmmaker of all time. You really can't say too much. Like I said, it's fun to talk shit about the prequels. It's fun to talk like George Lucas making decisions. I like Jar Jar. Why don't we stick a CGI bird right there? It's fun to do that, and it's fun to rag on the prequels, and we're going to get plenty of that in the future. We alluded to it. Yes, we're going to be talking about Episode 2, Attack of the Clones, on our next segment. James, I really don't have anything else to add to this. I feel mentally exhausted going over this film.
Yeah. We don't know what the next topic is going to be for whatever the next episode is. Hopefully we'll have some information on episode 9 that we can talk about, kind of make that the centerpiece. But the episode after that is when we'll be talking about episode 2.
Why don't we make next episode all about episode 9 speculations? We can just talk about, the Knights of Ren, the title, if we haven't gotten it by then.
We can do that. We'll just have to, we'll have to keep any discussions regarding episode 7 or 8 kind of light, just because we're going to review those in the next few months. And I want to have plenty of things to talk about when it comes to that time. So yeah, we could do like a general overview of what we could expect out of 9, or what we'd like to see out of 9, what we hope J.J. Abrams might do with episode 9. Hopefully we'll have some information on that by then, but we'll see. Yep. Who knows? And
we'll keep you all up to date on the Twitter sphere, if we decide to change that as well. Follow us at the Cantina Cabana. You can follow me, Thomas, at RebelScum2187. James, what's your Twitter thingy again?
You can find me at review my username, but don't have, it's like when it comes to the username part, it's USRNAME. So no E in user. I know that's kind of confusing, but that's what it is.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for sticking around. If you made it this long, Star Wars: The Phantom Menace review by yours truly. Y'all have a good night.
See you, everybody.